Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to your Daily Penguin and your Daily Frida. This is our tour through my Penguin Classic wall. We're going to do this until we run out of penguins. Who knows how long that will be? So we're in a little bank of oh, do you want to say hi again? Oh, she want to go down. We went on a nice long walk. She enjoyed it very much. Although, boy, oh boy, schnauzers overheat. They overheat. Her spirit is willing, but her flesh is weak. So I'm going to have to watch out for that if actual summer comes here. It's freezing cold today, but there is a bright sun, so that overheated her. And like I've mentioned a few times, the actual planet's tilt is going to change. Physically, this enormous rocky planet in the inner orbit of this solar system is going to change. There's going to be a tilt to the planet. Technically, that should cause some kind of simulation of slightly warmer weather here in Boston. I no longer believe that will happen, but at least physics tells me so. So I'm going to have to think, if anything like warmer weather comes here instead of all these winter blooms, then I'm going to have to think about what to do with the baby bean, because she overheats even in direct sunlight. That will do it even in winter. But anyway, we're doing our penguins, and we are in a bank of Penguin Classic Deluxe editions. I think those are about to run out, and we're going to do all sorts of other stuff. Penguin has a variety of formats to choose, but today we have a Penguin Classic Deluxe edition that is another example. You saw the Penguin Classic Deluxe edition of the collected novels of Jane Austen, and I mentioned that I love it so much for just the world that it is the book, it is the Jane Austen that I pull down if I want, like for instance, Mansfield Park. I don't go for Mansfield Park, I go for that book. And I mentioned that I like it because it's a whole world, because Jane Austen's novels, it's wonderful to think about them as happening in roughly the same kind of world. And plenty of pastiche novelists have done treatments where many of her characters overlap. And today is another. I mentioned that I have 2 copies of that collected Jane Austen because I use it so much. I'm worried about the copy I have failing. So the second time I saw a copy, I grabbed it. And this is another example. The one we have today is another example where I have 2 copies for the exact same reason, because I like revisiting the world so much in this enormous volume that I'm worried I'll wear it out. And that is this gorgeous thing, this Penguin Classic Deluxe edition of The Tale of Genji. This is the Royal Tyler translation, an enormous thing with artwork on the front, artwork on the back. You've got in this case, the French flaps have a bit of exposition, and I think that probably makes sense because this is we have a blurb from the Wall Street Journal, the Philadelphia Inquirer, and Newsweek, and then a description in the front flap. And I think that's probably necessary in this case because this is a bit much for people. I am so happy that Penguin decided to do this, that they decided to give this a Penguin Classic Deluxe edition. It very much deserves it. It's 1,000 years old. It's a fantastic, weird, slowly, beautifully unfolding story about a beautiful young man who is the son of an emperor, but the emperor decides to sort of bypass him for the official line of succession. So he becomes an extremely favored individual, but sort of footloose. He doesn't have the responsibilities. Genji himself doesn't have the responsibilities that would come with an official Prince of the Blood. And what we follow in this book is just his adventures, with a few digressions elsewhere. And I understand why Penguin would give this exposition on the cover, why I believe this has an introduction by Royal Tyler. All these blurbs on the inside too. I wish I were one of them, but I am not. The Cleveland Plain Dealer, Washington Post, Book World, Library Journal, Kirkus, Publishers Weekly. I believe this has an introduction by, yes it does. It has an introduction by Royal Tyler, and as well it should, because this is a difficult book. I just described it in one sentence. It's the adventures of a prince, of a shining prince, but there's so much else going on here, and so much of it is alien to a Western reading audience that you could have an introduction this long and you still wouldn't cover it all. But it casts a spell. This book casts a spell. Not on everybody. I have known people who tried this and failed, or tried and it failed them, one way or another. That they tried it and it didn't work. That it didn't cast a spell over them. Royal Tyler's translation is one of a small handful, 4 main ones, and of those 4, it's probably the one that I would recommend to people, mainly because you've got this gorgeous edition and that it helps a lot. But also, there are things that you can do. This is a tricky thing to translate into English, and there are all sorts of things you can do to help the reader while doing a minimum of violence to the text. And I think Royal Tyler finds that balance really well. Dennis Washburn does too in his, even Side and Sticker, in an older translation that one of you was kind enough to send me in the Everyman's Library hardcover. Now that I have that Side and Sticker back, I now have all of the translations of this book, and each one of them for me has their own charms. I think if I were to do my old shtick, once upon a time I did an old shtick of comparing the ins and outs, the nuances of translations by taking one passage and just looking at it in each book and sort of talking about what it does and doesn't do, what each of them does, what the strengths and weaknesses are. I actually kind of love doing that, and you could do that in this, and I believe that every one of those translations, I think every one of those translations would have its own strength. So I don't think, as much as I love the Royal Tyler translation, I don't think this is a case of it surpassing older translations. I don't think any Genji translation has surpassed older ones. Even the Whaley translation, which takes enormous liberties with the text, I don't think is surpassed by the later ones. I just think they, I don't know, respond to a different translator ethos or whatever. But either way, this is the prettiest version of the Tale of Genji that I have, and this is my sort of my reading copy, if you want to call it that. This is a beater copy. I found it in one of those, in a box actually, of free books on the sidewalk, and I think it was in there because this. I don't know if you're going to be able to make it out, but this had a big rip along the bottom there. So that's all that's wrong with it. No highlighting, no nothing like that, no damage anywhere else. So I, of course, plucked it out of there, and I just reinforced the cover a little so that wouldn't get any worse. So it doesn't bother me at all. And this is not the work of pure untouched beauty like my other Penguin Classic Deluxe edition of this book. So this is the one I go to grab off the shelf when I'm wandering the Penguin Classic shelf, as I do, and I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you, BookTube. I have talked about this book many times. I've been in read-alongs before BookTube. I was in a read-along all summer long, the Summer of Genji. I wonder if the Summer of Genji is still findable online. That would be a lot of fun. That's the last communal read-along that I think I ever did with my friend Sam, and we had a couple of other people who were involved as well. I don't know what to tell you in terms of the natural ending of our Daily Penguin, which is to recommend. Of course, I recommend this book. Of course, I recommend any of the English language versions of this book. I'd recommend this Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition, certainly, because you'll be getting, and probably it's expensive online, but you would be getting everything for your money. This is a lovely, lovely edition and a great translation. But Genji is an undertaking. I'm perfectly willing to admit that. It's an undertaking. No matter how good the translator is, it's a different world. And if you're willing to meet that world, if you're willing to enter it and sort of when in Rome do as the Romans do, I think you will fall under this book's spell. I would like to believe that anyway. So, of course, it's a recommend, but with caution, because even the Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition this does about as much for you as any version in English of Genji can do, and even so, this is going to put demands on you. So, I strongly recommend that you undertake that. Absolutely I do. But I'm so happy to see this thing. It's going to be, once again, as with the collected Jane Austen, it's going to be a strain for me to put this back on the shelf instead of just diving in. And I absolutely cannot dive in. I have lots of stuff to do that doesn't involve a totally self-indulgent reread. But I imagine that a lot of these penguins are going to do that. So they're going to present that kind of a temptation. I'm just going to have to resist it. So that's your penguin for today. None other than the Tale of Genji. I do not believe, off the top of my head, I can't think that Penguin does any other version of Genji. There was an abridged version that was out and about, maybe even still be in print. Much, much shorter than this. It makes me weep to see it. I mean, I understand for the mercy of school kids, you might want that, but any reader who wants an abridged version of you believe me, if you do fall under the spell of this book, you're going to get to page 1200 or whatever, and you're going to wish there was more. You're not going to want it to be abridged. But I don't think that Penguin does another version of this book. I don't think they do. I don't remember ever seeing this book in a normal Black Spine Penguin Classic. They may, but I don't know that I've ever seen that. I don't think they do an abridgment. I think this might be it. And boy, oh boy, I'm very happy to have two copies, one to read and beat up and carry into the bathroom and whatnot, and the other to just have on the shelf in case this one gives up the ghost. But that is your Penguin Classic for today. It's none other than The Tale of Genji, the first and still the best of all novels. But I'm going to wrap this up, and I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.